Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday stream. And today we're going to talk about a topic that it's drive me crazy happy. And we take the chance to talk with Brad since the new book is out. Everyone, I'm going to be putting where you can check the book in Amazon. And Brad, I have you since the beginning so people can get used to your face because maybe you're new for some people, but from the people in this field, you're a seasoned, how we call it, expert in communication. Hi, Brad.
Hi, how are you, Susan? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
How are you gonna how will define yourself? Because you have so many years. Because you start when you were 10. I cannot believe you had all the years you have an experience, but you have many years and different range of polygraph, Secret Service. You capture one of the most prolific counterfeiter, more people doesn't know that Secret Service. So I don't want to ruin the story because it's your story and it's on your book too. But how you define yourself when you introduce yourself with someone today?
I just hope to be a good man, hope to be a good father, hope to be a good husband. And those are the things that come first, obviously, because if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And then after that, I think I've learned from a wonderful set of parents and siblings to devote your life to public service because that's what it's about. So I hope I've done that over the last 25 years and hope I can continue. And as part of that journey, I've had a lot of the Crayola box, so to speak, of experiences, both protection and investigations that I think I might be able to share with people. And my losses and my failures can hopefully be something that people can learn from.
One of the things that I love about the people who really did the thing is how modest they are. And I know your pedigree. I know where you're coming from. And you haven't mentioned anything yet. So people pay attention. When they need to brag about it, is maybe because they didn't do it. Check that. So, Brad, how do you start with the law enforcement, military? How again, I don't want to frame it wrong. And one ended up will tell me everything, and people can tell you everything. So let's just start from the beginning.
Yeah, so as a young kid, I was always riding around on my bike, and when we played cops and robbers, I was always the cop. And my favorite TV show, I'm definitely dating myself, was Chips with John Baker and Poncherello, were two California Highway patrolmen that pretty much solved the biggest case in the world. No one ever got hurt. And then, growing up watching cartoons, I watched Scooby Doo. And when you watch Scooby Doo, what do? Every episode, they catch the bad guy, and it's that easy. They always unmask the person that did it. So growing up in that kind of environment, I think it was something where I always wanted to know, why do things work? What's behind door number two? And so that kind of got me in that headspace as far as wanting to go in law enforcement. And in grad school, I did a job where we worked down at the local jail. And here I am, a snot-nosed kid from a small town, and I get to talk to criminals every day, people that have been arrested for various crimes. And I always wanted to really dig deep and find out what brought them to this position. And I was amazed at then when you would kind of ask them about their life journey, that they would tell you how people would open up when you're tactically curious and you actually care. And they would tell you how they became a pimp, how they became a prostitute, how they got here significantly hurting somebody. And especially if I focused on leisure activities, they would open up. So that kind of got me in. I interned with the Secret Service, saw great men and women that really had public service at their heart. They got to travel around the world and do really cool things. And a lot of the things that I did definitely wasn't in the recruiting brochure. So 99% boredom and 1% awesome. But for 25 years, it was a fun journey.
And you were with someone who have a really well-known name on the market. You train Eva.
Yeah, definitely part of it. She got trained by many people, but great polygraph examiner, great agent. But yeah, she did very well for herself in the Secret Service, and has obviously done amazing for herself with a great book in her subsequent Secret Service years, Miss Pomporis.
Yeah, she don't talk too much about the polygraph part, but yeah, I understand that she worked with you. So why the Secret Service? Because Secret Service, most people think is like going behind the president and take the bullet. But what they don't know is initially Hoover started the Secret Service as the money making fraud catchers.
Yeah, so 1865, Alan Pinkerton gets together with Abraham Lincoln, and this was the last thing he signed into law because the Confederate States of America were basically one quarter of the money supply was counterfeit. So if people don't have faith in something, it kind of breaks down the system. Just like honesty, if you don't have faith in people, it breaks down the system. So Lincoln got together and said, "We need people that are worthy of trust and confidence." That was a motto that we've had since that point. And for 150 some years now, 160 years, we've been in existence. But it wasn't until 1901 they took over protection after the third president had been assassinated. So since then, we've been evolving. Obviously, after Kennedy, they had to make changes. After Reagan, they had to make changes. And then after Butler, we've obviously had to make significant changes. And going into the 2028 Olympics, where it's what a heavy lift, where they're the primary security apparatus for that and all the foreign dignitaries that come in, it's going to be another significant challenge. So there's a lot ahead for that organization.
So, and why the Secret Service and how the polygraph enter in your life? And I'm going to say something before we start talking about polygraph. I study polygraph in the UK. I study with, oh my God, the read technique, because
Mhm.
part of the read technique is great. And the problem is how we use it, like
Mhm.
everything. I don't believe any technique is bad or good. Is the person administrating this? So I will not going to take questions about criticizing the polygraph. It's not a lie detector. We're not going to go there. I'm not personally have any interest to take the conversation there. It's not about conflicts. It's to understand why people like Albino and Sapir, both study with him, and Brad become so good making questions because that is the art of the polygraph, correct?
Yeah, polygraph, much like you mentioned read technique, it's all in how it's utilized. If you're going to use it like Jerry Springer, if you're going to use interrogation on a 15-year-old with five interrogators and make promises and keep him away from his family and talk to him for 16 hours and bring up fake evidence, yeah, that's not the read technique, nor is that polygraph. So a hammer can be used constructively and a hammer can be used destructively. Polygraph's been around since 1939, and I will tell you, I'll give you a quick story. One of the most fascinating parts about it was we had three Secret Service agents. They were the first federal polygraph examiners that went to training in Chicago. That was where the Chicago Crime Lab was first established at Northwestern, probably a place you're very familiar with. And 1939, John Reed and Leonard Keeler got together, and they had a little 2-week school for these three agents, and they taught them the polygraph. And this
I'm
agent,
sorry. And by the way,
yeah,
everybody know the Reed, but most people don't know Killer. Killer is what is today medical machine, is medical device.
mhm,
So what he developed in the polygraph ended up being one of the most affluent and successful medical device and ophthalmic medical device
mhm.
companies on the world. So it has a medical base. When they check your pulse, and I think it's a medical base. So people, please read about things before you
Mhm.
criticize. I'm sorry, Brad. Continue, but
No,
most
you're
people doesn't
fine.
know.
He was definitely a big pioneer in that, and he added the electrodermal activity sensor to what we now know, which is very similar to some of the things that we utilize to this day. But this examiner went back to New York, and he was an agent there, a very veteran agent, but he was working a counterfeit case, and they had a hard time kind of putting this case down. And it was one of those things where he had never done a polygraph actually in the field before, but they surveilled this individual to a tenement building. It was about 8 stories high. I think it had 8 rooms on each floor, and they couldn't follow this person up to this room to where he picked up the counterfeit. But what they did is they took him into custody when he left because he had some counterfeit on, and they were obviously trying to find out, hey, which room would this have been in? And they can't go in and kick in all 64 doors. So they brought him in. They attached him to the components of this newfangled, instrument, and they did what's called a searching peak attention test or a guilty knowledge test. And it's one of the things that even people that don't like polygraph agree is a good approach. And what they did is they asked him, is it on room 1 through 8? Is it on room A through G, whatever it was? And they looked for those changes. And I'll be darned if they didn't hit on whatever it was, room 4D. They go over there and do a search warrant on room 4D, and there's the counterfeit plant. So you can imagine 1939, okay, pre-World War II, where you've got this new instrument. You must have thought you had godlike powers with that. And obviously it's evolved since then, but polygraph is, once again, it needs to be used in the right situation, on the right person, at the right time, at the right part of the investigation, with quality control and guardrails organizationally attached to it. And when it's used for that, when it's used for counterintelligence purposes, when it's used for applicant purposes, when it's used, once again, for specific issue purposes, criminal issues, at the right time, it's a very effective tool. It takes our ability to detect deception from 54% up towards the 90s. But is it perfect? Absolutely not. So we always have to keep that in the back of our mind, is that we've all made mistakes with it. But too many times you throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you take mistakes that were made when they didn't use it effectively, and you try to apply that to the mean.
I completely agree. I have seen people using body language, microexpression, linguistic, whatever you want to put it, horribly. And again, I study things that I don't agree, like read technique. And when I study, it says, wait a minute, the behavioral questions are really good. The
Mm-hmm.
problem
Yeah.
is when they go to the second part that I don't agree so much, and I have kind of a conflict applying that. But the behavioral part is great and actually is being used by. So amino acid use part of that on the questionnaire that for the ones who study with amino acid. I don't know if he keep doing it, or the
Yep.
one who he does only for the law enforcement, is that they give you a questionnaire and you send the questionnaire. You don't even need to be there, and
Mm-hmm.
people confess without knowing. And one of the questions are part of the read technique and the behavioral part of if you know how to use it. I use it even when I'm going to the supermarket to know if the fish is fresh. So that's how,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You're looking for the outliers in a lot of those questions. So is it perfect? Absolutely not. And some of it's out there. So there are smart criminals that research this. But a lot of times, what it'll do is it'll put me and show me which wall is the dartboard on. And what I mean by that is, if I ask somebody, can you give me 3 reasons, Susan, why you think somebody would rob a bank?
Oh,
If
that
you
is in
robbed
the
the
chapter
bank,
12. So
yeah,
this is in the
chapter 12.
chapter 12, people. I read the book before it went out. I just put the book again. Chapter 12, in deception detection. I love that
Mhm.
example. Please continue. Chapter 12.
Yeah. So if I ask a person, I don't know if they've done it or not, and I say, hey, can you come up with 3 reasons why somebody might rob a bank? It's operating on availability bias, recency bias, and the brain working like a file cabinet. If you've done it many, many times, you're going to pull that file cabinet in your brain, and you're going to look for the first file associated with that and the first file in that specific folder. And what happens a lot of times is, for guilty individuals, what they'll do is that say, oh, I don't know, maybe they needed the money, maybe things were tight around Christmas, I don't know, maybe they needed to buy their daughter something. It's where it's so specific and it fits their narrative that now I know where the dartboard is, so that when I do talk to them either after the polygraph or after the interview, I have a really good base of knowledge as far as where I want to go. Versus if I don't ask that question, it could be a million different reasons why somebody robbed that bank. And I had one particular case in South Carolina, unfortunately, where a 10-year-old was shot by a stray bullet. And I asked the individual, can you come up with 3 reasons why somebody might shoot somebody? And he said, I don't know, disrespect, maybe anger. I don't know. Maybe they had just purchased a new gun and they were showing it off to their friends, and somebody took that as an affront, and then things kicked off from there. Wow, that was very specific. And it turns out that was the exact reasons why it had happened, is that he was brandishing the gun. Some other people saw that. They took that as an affront, and it kind of kicked off from there. So that showed me where the dartboard was. And anytime you can hit that message, car sales, think of this, Susan. I mean, I know you've probably bought a car. Is one of the things that they do is, sales is sales. I'm selling jail in some respects. I'm selling timeshares. Well, when you're selling a car, I need to sell you the right car. Now, with the internet, it's a lot easier for people to come in as informed buyers. But many, many times, if you're on the lot and the salesman says to you, "Hey, what three things are you looking for in your car?" If you say dependability, resale value, and gas mileage, well, I definitely don't want to sell you the sports car, okay, or the coupe, or I'm not speaking the right language to you. So not only do I know which car to sell you, I'm going to only focus on those features, because I want to validate what your pain points were and what your features that you wanted coming in. So you're just going to hear that echoed back by me, and it's going to validate the decision that you already want to make.
Brad, you always talk and you reinforce in the book and every chapter, and is that the good interrogator is not the one who talk. The good interrogator is the one who ask when you need to ask question. The
Mhm.
questions are more important than the answer, and is patiently listened. And
Mhm.
one of the biggest problem is the people don't listen. They want to jump too fast and a pointing, oh, you're lying. And when people do that, like, why? Why
Yeah.
are you doing that? You just
Mhm.
ruin it. You never tell people that you find out you're lying. You need to put frozen face. It's
Yeah.
the questions and to be approachable. And I want to put a fourth thing. When people is so easy saying, oh yeah, that person should be killed, or that person is holding hostage, you never know how a stupid situation can end up in a hostage situation, a shooting.
Yeah.
Um, I I had been and hear a lot of stories that you make reinforce another thing on the book is people concentrate so much on the person that we're looking to find lies from. Then I don't understand why. But you concentrate and you need to be the person who need to be centered, how to control the breathing, how to control the heart. So you learn that as a polygrapher. Why you emphasize so much? Nobody else. I never read another book when somebody makes so much emphasis on how you need to prepare to be prepared.
Yeah, the first thing is a lot to unpack there, but as far as the first thing is, calm leads to calm. Is that if people see my stress, it's going to be contagious to them. It's going to be contagious to the environment. De-escalation is obviously key. When we learn this when we do protection, you never want to see another agent running. You never want to see them frantic because it's contagious. We got to keep that veneer that everything we're doing here is controlled. And that's not just for somebody we think may have done the deed, but also for innocent people. If you walk in and you go to the doctor's office, the dentist's office, and you look and they're like, ooh, wow, oh, man, I mean, when they see that facial expression, if you're a patient, you're going to be like, whoa, what just happened? And it's going to cause anxiety. It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you walk into a dentist's office, one of my good friends is a dental consultant, and he makes a lot of more money consulting than he does in dentistry, which is hard to believe. But he will come in and he'll design the right paint colors that calm people. He'll have the right music that calms people. He'll have the right fish in the aquarium that calms people. He will give people choice that gives them control, such as the kind of fluoride that they have, the color of the toothbrush, the kind of music that's playing, what Keurig they can use, or what kind of soft drinks are in the cooler that they can grab. Their perceived choice leads to control. The soundproofing in the room so you don't hear the worst sound in the world, the sound of grinding. Having separate business office to where somebody steps aside and you don't hear the person banging their credit card for $900 for that crown, because that's painful to somebody in the waiting room. So just designing the right room, designing the right headspace, what I put out, too much of body language is how am I reading that other person? And you've seen it. And there's some amazing people out there, Joe Navarro, Dr. Abby Moronio, yourself, other people in this field. They're great at looking at people and looking for comfort, discomfort. But what am I putting out into the world? I'm
What
putting
is
out
action
emotional contagion.
reaction? What it
Yes.
called action reaction. When people says, oh, it was super aggressive, and like, can
Yeah.
we review what you did before the person react? No, I didn't do anything. Like, okay, that face, it's an aggressive face, maybe like the resting bitch
Mhm.
face and the 11th. Some people do it naturally, and if you
Yeah.
don't know the other person, that can be the first follower friend. Like, I'm following just what you're doing, I'm not acting
Yeah.
to you, I'm reacting. But people don't believe that.
Yeah, and people, you have to look at it this way. A dog and a baby, what are they picking up on? They can't understand the human language, right? I mean, the dog's a little bit, the hear, sit, that type of stuff, that their pattern recognition that they get associated with treats, whatever the case may be. But if you're a stranger and you're just walking up to a dog or you're walking to a baby, they're looking at our face and our presence. They're looking at the pitch of our voice, things like this. They're not looking at our words. So a lot of times with my students, what I'll do is I'll turn off the sound and I'll say, how do you look? Did you furrow the brow at the admission? Did you furrow the brow? Were you neutral when you first met them? Because we can go back 300,000 years ago, an early man they didn't have a spoken language. So what they would do is they'd look at the presence and say, is this a danger to me? Is that rustle in the bushes going to come eat me? Okay, is this person from an enemy tribe? So they'd look for friend signs. So friend signs for me is not neutral. That's going to code negative. So I'm going to have that slight eyebrow lift. I'm going to have that slight tilt my ear to the side every once in a while to expose that carotid. I'm going to be ventrally fronted. The dog, it's going to roll over and let you pet its belly when it feels comfortable. But I'm not going to approach it aggressively. I'm not going to have my tone be a high pitch because we're going to associate that with danger. We didn't always have 911 radios, but when I talk to my officers and agents, I think back about the first time they were in a anxious situation and they got on the radio, they sounded like the 12-year-old version of themselves. And that's just human nature because a higher pitch carries further into the fields and forests, but our ears are coded to listen for that. And that's stressful and that's not good. So I need to slow down. I need to deepen my tone a little bit. I need to be composed. And when I do that, that's contagious in a good way. When I do the opposite of that, that's contagious in a bad way. Because my first goal, Susan, is to get the truth. Too many times people in this space, they're looking for the deception. They're looking for the counterfeit. There's a million different ways you can counterfeit money, just like there's a million different ways you can lie. There's one way you can do genuine money. And if you learn what genuine money is, everything else is counterfeit. So I look for I look for the truth first. And when you do that, you're going to be a lot more effective. And I think a lot of the research has shown that the lie bias that people have is what throws off your ability to detect deception a lot, especially with strangers. And then truth bias, when it comes to friends, that's what throws us off because we think our friends and our family are telling us the truth all the time when in fact they're not.
Yeah, when people come to me and says, I want to find out if the people is lying, and what you're going to do with that? Well, I'm gonna confirm this line. Okay, you trying to confirmation bias. Okay, so whatever you're gonna go on that road and that conversation, it's only gonna be looking for clues to confirm what you already believe. Or when someone says, "I'm gonna find out if my partner is cheating," already you know. Stop trying to confirm. Look for a lawyer or decide what you're gonna do. The same.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that Minan teaches on the class is always believe on the subject, always, and then go from pieces. The most important part in communication is okay, if the person is lying, why? What's going on? What women and men lie for different reasons. The same way when it's an argument, women and men argue in different way. So you need to start understanding patterns, human behavior. You need to understand why. And sometimes people just lie because embarrassment. I so many times I in conversations is I know there's something going on. I don't says I found out that you're lying, but it looked like you're embarrassed about something. And
Mm-hmm.
then I found out that the embarrassment situation lead to lies. So when people come to you, civilians come to you to learn, why you teach them regarding tell me everything because you specialize in we're going to go to the book because it's the only book in this area from neuroscience, behavior economic, people on the top field doing the forward of the book. So we're going to talk about why this book is different. Dun, dun, dun. So when a civilian comes to you and says, "Oh, I want to learn how why people is lying," because I know we have a similar approach to that, but you're not obviously here level teaching. What you tell them, how you teach them, how you make them better without getting obsessed about, oh, I don't know if somebody's lying to me.
Well, I don't want the lie, right? So what I want to do is I want to create the perfect situation where the lie doesn't have to happen. And if that's your starting point, when the lie does happen, it's going to be easier to see and easier to deal with because you've put them in the right headspace where you're not judging them. So Catholic confessional, what is so magical about a Catholic confessional? Obviously, it's ingrained in the Catholic faith, but it's a soundproof environment where people don't feel like they're judged by a professional who's not being disrespectful and he's providing you some type of spiritual out. That's what I'm trying to do kind of metaphorically is create that kind of space, both physically, mentally in their headspace. I want to be in the right headspace. I don't want to come off and judge them too quickly. You know, we make very, very poor first impressions when it comes to this. And once we do that, and once we have that confirmation bias kick in and we put the horns on them, it's very hard to see anything outside of that. That heuristic is very, very strong and it's very difficult to get out of. So what I try to do is when I would come out on a polygraph or I come into something, I want to come with the focus of, I don't think this person is guilty. Because once again, when we get that confirmation bias, it's very, very problem. And the Othello effect can kick in. Ekman talks about this. And I'll give you a scenario where if you don't feel like you're being believed, you start acting as if you're guilty. You actually start looking like you're guilty. So I think back about a few years ago, my wife and I, we were fortunate enough to be able to buy a new car, and we get it. And about 3 days after we bring it back, from the dealership, she calls me and she goes, "Hey, whose female sunglasses are under the right front seat of the new car?" And the way she said it, I just was like, oh, okay, I don't know. Call Bob at the dealership. Somebody must have left it under the right front seat. About a millisecond later, she goes, no, 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 no. Whose glasses are under the right front seat of the car that are not mine? Now, the way she said it, okay, was very inquisitive.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was with a certain vocal tonality, if you will. Now, what goes through my mind at that point is, wow, am I being accused of something? And then what next goes through my mind is, I don't know what I'm going to potentially say to make somebody believe me, because I have no freaking idea whose sunglasses are. But what's the problem? I don't know how to prove that. So what happened to my vocal inflection? Do you think it went up? Yes. Do you think I was probably sweating? Probably. Do you think my body language probably got closed up? 100%. Okay. Thankfully the neighbor comes over maybe an hour later and goes, "Hey, did you see my sunglasses when you took me for a test drive?" This to my wife. So, right. But that happens where truth is stranger than fiction, and situations happen where somebody's in the wrong place at the wrong time and they feel like they're not believed. And there's also a lot of criminals, because they've lied so many and they've committed so many criminal acts, that being talked to by the police is not a significant life event to them anymore. So they actually are a lot calmer under pressure. They have that exposure therapy, where a lot of our applicants, or especially a lot of criminals, they get overwhelmed by the moment and they look guilty. And we get that gut where, oh, I think that person did it. The gut instinct is for, a police officer walking up to a car and the hair stands up on the back of the neck. Pattern recognition kicks in. Something's not right. Call for backup, get some concealment and some cover. That's where it saves us. Where a gut instinct is terrible is where I'm sitting in an interview room and I'm sitting outside the interview room and I'm taking this information in and I says, my gut tells me she's lying. But what are they lying about? Like you said, are they lying about they're embarrassed? Are they lying about they were in the wrong time, the wrong place? Are they lying about they used some type of drug the night before? Or they're cheating on their wife? Or there could be a million different things going on there that's causing them to lie. They could have been taught to lie to law enforcement their entire life. They may not want to be a snitch because they're afraid what's going to happen to them. I can't, there's very few, Susan, evil people on the planet. There's a lot of people that did evil things. But too many times we view everybody we're talking to as evil instead of the situational factors that brought them to that point. And that's what really opened my eyes talking to thousands of people in research projects that are locked up, is a lot of these people, if given a different set of circumstances, might have turned out different. So I've got to spend so much time when I talk to them finding out what those circumstances are so I can connect with them better.
When people come and says there are 32 kind of lies, I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm actually doing an ebook. I'm gonna publish. It's not gonna be a book. It was gonna be an ebook that everybody can download. But you talk about a couple of them. You talk about the lies of omission, and we're gonna start going to the book. I can believe it's already half an hour. You and I, every time we talk, we never make him listen an hour. Two nerds together.
Two
Talking
nerds.
about nerds, two nerds together. So there's so many things that I'm gonna talk about your book. So let's go there. I love the cover. And guys, if you haven't seen the cover of the book, Tell Me Everything. There is a reason for the cover, and I'm gonna say it. Because when someone like Brad need to go through the book, you don't have an idea, people, the filters and the review and personal review and third-party review you require for a book to be published, to make sure that you're not giving the bad guys the good information.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I love everything that is cross. It's a file going on right now that is cross review. If you read between lines. Anyway, I just say, just read the book between lines. You're going to think that this book has the same cases than other books talk about it, but it's a caveat. Be curious. This book is really well written to get the right people. But Why the book? There's so many, and I'm gonna say it in the good way. There's so many people writing books. There's so many books out there. Why this book? And again, read between lines. Why?
Yeah, so it started off just as a law enforcement book. For the last 8 years with the Secret Service, I taught at the National Center of Creditability Assessment, which is a federal polygraph school, and we've got 30 of the federal agencies there. And once again, I talked about Crayola box. You would say Baskin Robbins, but there's a lot of different flavors and colors from the intelligence and law enforcement community there that thankfully I was able to draw from. But the end product we wanted to provide these students was to be diverse in what they were doing. So it kind of started off drawn from that and for that end user. And luckily, I had a great editor and Matt Holt and Ben Bella books that said, "Hey, this is a book that can help a parent, can help an entrepreneur, can help with sales, can help a kid at 2 a.m. that's afraid that he's going to be judged by his parents when he says, I need to ride home, to have a better relationship as a parent so that that kid will call him before they make that poor choice." So that's the why of the book. If I can help one person in one situation, whether it be a law enforcement officer or someone in sales or a parent, to do that. And you talked about, lies by omission and lies by commission. Lies by omission are very, very difficult to stop. If you want to metaphorically say the dog off the leash, is that people can take you wherever they want to take you. And that's where Avion and, I always mispronounce his first name, Sapir, but
Welcome to
Mr.
the club.
Sapir.
I call it sir.
Just
So,
call him sir.
sir.
But that's one of the things in an open-ended statement or an omission he does so good with is, looking for so, then, next, all these little transitionary statements, the eyes, the ownership, left versus went, all these different things that you can look at that are very, very hard if you don't practice them. But when you have an ear for them, you can look for those transitional moments and decide, hey, that a lot of times that's where the lie is, I went here, then I did this. Well, what did they just erase? Where did they lose time? Things like that. And so we talk a little bit of that in the book as far as when we can hone in on those times. They're like flashlights or little road flares that go up to say, hey, let's expose that. But the thing I really like to do that can be a force multiplier for people, and it kind of ties in with polygraph, is I want to look in the 3 to 5 second periods of time when I ask yes or no questions. I want to put the dog on the leash and I want to ask a question that's yes or no. So for instance, if you were telling me a story, Susan, about your supervisor, and I know you're the boss, but let's say you were a subordinate, and you went to another subordinate and you were talking about how you told off the boss and X, Y, and Z. I told her this, I told him that, bop, 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 bop. And your coworker's not believing you. Okay, they just said, I don't think she said that to the boss. You can let that play out, and just when it ends up, you can say, wow, you said that to her? And what you did is you took this open-ended statement where they were making a bunch of just various statements, and then you put the spotlight on them. And that spotlight effect kicked in, and now they've got to make a choice. They've got to answer a yes or no question. And what many times happen is they walk off that statement. They'll say something like, well, in so many words, I mean, she knows what I was getting at, because she doesn't want to commit to the lie. And by doing the yes or no, it's the same thing on a polygraph. I don't have you do an open-ended thing. That's why sometimes when you watch Jerry Springer and they're doing these polygraphs, it's just ridiculous. They're surprise questions. They're, open-ended statements. It's terrible.
I know
Well,
a person who was a producer of the show here in Chicago, and like you couldn't believe it. Most of those circus were true, but anyway, but they use
yeah,
real polygraphers.
Yeah. So if I make it a yes or no question, what I'm looking for, first off, and once again, these are not 100%. And I love it when I read things on YouTube or other books where people are like, if you do this, you're going to be this effective. And it's ridiculous, right? I'm going to make incremental changes. And there are times where, don't get me wrong, you get such a bad answer. Just to go back before we go forward, another
You
read
want to help
question
them to
is,
lie. It's so
yeah,
bad that you're going to help them to lie. Like, really,
yes,
you come out with that
yes.
bullshit?
Well, so it's the other read question that's been used for years, and it's not presumptive innocent if somebody answers it correctly. But I would say, if given the wrong answer, there's a high correlation that they had involvement, was especially in serious felonies. Is if I ask, hey, what do you think should happen to somebody that shoots somebody? And I'll go back to the same case where somebody gave the bad 3 reasons. And this is a 10-year-old girl that died. And the subject said, well, I think everybody deserves a second chance. Wow, that's a really bad answer for a 10-year-old that got murdered. Or what do you think should happen to somebody that, I got to be careful with wording, but child exploitation case. Let's just say, what should happen to somebody that does severe child exploitation? Somebody says, no, treatment. Many times, what they're doing is they're saying what they want to have happen to them if they're caught. Okay. They don't want to judge themselves. So, very presumptive and very, very much a red flag for that. So, the other things I look for is yes or no answers that involve delay, especially when I see the pattern recognition of I ask you 5 or 6 questions and it's no, 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 and then it's no. Okay. Once again, just a little flare, little red flag. Okay. I'm not going to say, you did it, one, because I don't want to call them out in the moment because they'll never do it again. But it's just a little tick mark in my brain like, I may follow up on that later. And when we do that, whether it be with Afghans or criminals, many, many times that's where there's an issue. So it's also how they answer. Okay. And once again, no, 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 no with an exclamation point. And then no is with a question mark. It's almost like, do they believe me? Okay. They lack a commitment to that. So I'll ask my daughter, did you clean your room? Yes. Okay. I don't think you did. Or not being overly specific. So, hey, Sydney, did you do your homework? I got my math homework done. That wasn't the question. I didn't say, did you get your math homework done? I said, did you get your homework done? Right. So she was being specific. So I'll follow it up with, what other homework do we need to get done? I need to get my biology homework. Damn, Dad. Right. LY statements. You'll see these a lot of times in open-ended statements or follow-up statements, usually, normally, typically. Man, why is that in there? Why is usually, normally, or typically in there? I usually do this. A lot of times they say that when usual didn't happen or when normal didn't happen. So that's another thing to keep in your brain. And then I'm not a big believer in this, but I do see it, is the little spices that are put in statements. And, I swear to God, I'm the most honest, ask anybody, I'm the most honest person you know. And that's a lot of times a spice that's followed up after silence. So they'll say no. And then we just kind of remain silent. And then they're like, well, I swear to God, why do you need to add that? So once again, just a little red flag.
I'm trying to look, your style of book, and just come up to me, is really similar to the style of Houston Carnicero. Houston and Carnicero were two, thank you very much. You see,
very, very much. Great book. Great book.
Great book, but you have the same style of writing and explanation that is so simple. And Robin Drake does the same. He explained things, and a 5 years old who never wrote or read anything regarding, they're going to understand it. That's what I love about your book. It's simple. It synthesizes things in a way that, okay, you're going to understand the why and how. Now, regarding the book, tell me everything. Why? Why tell me everything? It's provocative. It's curious. I love the cover. I love everything about that. Why tell me everything?
I think it came from, I learned a lot of lessons early on to ask one of the most important questions. After somebody dips their toes in the water of the truth, they typically will tell you something, but they won't tell you everything. And you follow that up with what else? And you've created such an environment that they go that next step and they tell you everything. If somebody feels like they can tell you anything, they will tell you everything, but you have to ask. And in the child exploitation space, a lot of times we will work these to catch predator cases, and we'll work CSAM, child sexual abuse material cases. And we've already got them arrested. They showed up to do this bad thing, or they're downloading images they shouldn't download. But since 2003, our polygraph program with the Secret Service has stolen, I say stolen in a good way, what Customs and Homeland Security was doing, and postal inspectors before that, where we were polygraphing these individuals to see if they had actually engaged in follow-up offenses or more serious offenses. And by asking that what else, and by creating the right headspace at the right time, and by doing tons of prep work, we'll definitely have to talk about that, how prep is so important. By doing that prep work, we'll know where the dartboard is, and we'll know things are going to resonate with them, and how we can speak their language to create a safe space for them to come forward to where they'll tell us that something they've never told another human being. And they will do it willingly. They will do it ethically. They will do it legally. And we will end that conversation with them saying, Brad, thank you for letting me get that off my chest. And so that's why we wrote the book. Tell me everything.
And the foreword is with common friends and people that we know each other, but I haven't seen Dr. Paul Sack do a lot of forward and books like this. You have uh, Dr. Polsak, Google Polsak and oxytocin, and you're going to
Mhm.
understand. He's a behavioral neuroscience. He talk about oxytocin all the time, scientists, and he did the forward of your book. That was a huge one. You have Joe Navarro, you have Robin, you have doctors in the field doing the forward with the do. Why you went to that to those peoples to ask for the forward? What was the reason? So people can
Well,
understand
mhm.
why they did it.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Zak wrote a great book called The Moral Molecule. He's obviously written other books about experiences and creating the right type of environments, from Disney to other things. He obviously works with big corporate vendors, and he's a very, very unbelievably intelligent human being. And he is big in neurochemistry. And I've always loved that aspect of it, is like, how can I create this feeling in someone else? Because there's science behind it. Okay. So if I can get somebody talking about their self, good conversation is like a good podcast, Susan. I do the prep work on the front end. Okay. So if I was a podcaster that wanted to make a great podcast, I would do the prep work. I'd read the book like you did with me. I'd talk to you in the green room or have pre-conversation conversations to break the ice. So you don't just jump on and be like, hey, how you doing? I would have an amazing first impression. I would allow you to talk 80% of the time, because the most beautiful voice in someone's head is their own voice. So I'd let you be the person talking. I'd let you get your message out there. I'd be your advocate, but I'd have some guardrails, because I know what my audience wants. And if you start going down a rabbit hole, I'll bring you back. But ultimately, I want you to shine. And so the neurochemistry associated with that would be something as simple as doing the prep work on the front end. I'm going to have an educated idea of what I want to talk to you about. I may want to talk to you about your cats. I may want to talk to you about your world travels. I may want to talk to you about your experiences in college and Great Britain, whatever the case may be. By understanding that, I can create a targeted, almost like a social media reel. So if you want to think of it as, if we're swiping on our phone, whatever we hover over or whatever we swipe left or right on, or whatever our search terms are, we're going to get a curated social media reel that we're going to more likely be assumed with. And access is information. Access is the key. If I can have access to you. So by having a targeted message, I'm going to get more access to you. So that's the first thing. The next thing is I have an acronym called FEEL: family, education, employment, leisure. Can't pick your parents. Sometimes it's a very touchy topic when you bring up family. Education, some people have more choices than others. Employment, same thing. But leisure activities, what you choose to do in 50, 60 hours a week, is your choice. And what you choose to do shows what's important to you. So let's do this. Let's do a little exercise here, Susan. What do you like to do in your free time? And I don't want to hear, I don't have any free time. I want you to make it up and act like you have free time if you don't. What do you like to do in your free time?
I have a wood shop. One of the reasons that I bought my house on the forest is because I have a wood shop, and all the things around me are things that I love to work with the hands because I'm a left brain. So that's relaxed me. It's something about sanding wood manually and touch it that connect me with something that maybe is my Asperger, that is disconnecting from reality and connected in my own reality. That's what I love to do. Not like I love to do.
Wow. Now, is that wood from your property that you're felling, and that's the end product? So kind of, you know, you're farming this wood and turning it into a finished product on the table, kind of, so to speak.
No, actually, I go for, you say, actually, I caught myself. I go to thrift stores where I live. A lot of old people die and the kids give away the furnitures, and I don't have any more
Oh,
space in my house. So what I do is I grab those furniture, I refurbish it, and I donate it to different shelters so they can sell it in eBay or places like that. Because during the pandemic, I didn't do anything else, so I have too many, and I enjoy it. So I like.
so what is it about a product that's maybe got some patina on it, that's maybe been stained, that's maybe been cut, that's whatever, and you turn it into a finished product? What about that brings you joy?
I'm a fixer, and it's part of the joy to fixing something for somebody else to reuse. And I love the story of the furniture. So I try to get my bedroom set is from a man who really didn't want it to sell it from all the
Mhm.
things on the house. And I sat with him on the bed and says, "Tell me about the set. What is so important to you?" And he says, "Do you want to buy it? I want to know the story." So he told me with the first salary he made, he bought that set for his wife, and he might die, and the kids want to size down the house, and he didn't want to let it go. And I says, "I understand, you should keep it." And he says, "You have $1." I'm like, "Yes." "Okay, the set is yours." "Why?" "Because you care more about the story than the furnitures."
Mhm.
So that's what I understand, that the furnitures
Yep,
have a
yep,
story, they crack, and I love the imperfection on the furnitures,
yeah,
and I
I
like to
love it.
keep them.
Yep. So twofold there. We could go down this rabbit hole. I could talk about how you refinish it, what kind of sanding you do, what kind of finishes you like, what kind of stains you like, because I love working with wood too. So, two aspects. The worst thing I could have done there is I ask you that question and I say, me too. I start off with, what do you like to do in your free time? And you say, work with wood. And I say, me too. And I turn the spotlight on me. And the conversation doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the iceberg. So we could have gone there for 30 minutes. And what am I not doing? I'm not interrogating you. I'm letting you bathe in your dopamine. So we go back to Paul Zach's work. You are associating that dopamine with me because I'm letting you talk 80% of the time. Your eyes are lighting up when you're talking about these, guy that gave you this bedroom set, right? And about you did it. And all that oxytocin is being released and it's just opening up all these pathways. But I can also use it later as a metaphor. Let's say you did do that bad thing. Susan, whatever you're there to talk to me about. We're an hour later, we're talking, and I think you did commit that crime, theft, whatever the case may be. And I say, Susan, look, here's the thing. We talked earlier about woodworking, and it's a process just like you. You got 30, 40 chapters in your book of life. And I bet you wish you could rip a couple of those pages out, maybe like one of these pages. If we want to say like this table, it's got scratches on it, it's got patina on it, it's got watermarks on it. But what can you do? You can sand that down. You can take that cheesecloth, you can clean it off, you can pick that right stain, and you can make something of this. And I think that's what we can do with this situation is we can fix this situation. We can patch this situation. We can restain this situation. Now that's just kind of thinking off the top of my head, but for you, if I was going to be your buddy, blame, understand, diminish impact, demonstrate tactical empathy, and focus on your why and not my what, if I was going to do that in real time, I could use that as a metaphor that would resonate to you. And I would go through so many barriers by having that targeted social media reel, just by asking, what do you like to do in your free time?
And that's people is why this book is forward with people that you're never going to find forward any book in this topic. And we have a question. Sam, thank you very much. She's been reposting our shows. There are any topics in the book that you will have like to go into more details, or perhaps could have written another whole book on the topic?
Yeah, I think a pet project of mine is just the emotional impact that law enforcement goes through in working through some of these cases. I know it got me pretty good working child exploitation cases because when you are really trying to connect with somebody, some of these people are evil. And as a result, you have to go to some dark places. And then at the end of the day, you come home and you come home to your family and you write that report. So I was blessed to have a really good support system that kind of taught me ways to deal with that. But it was something that definitely caused some vicarious trauma, talking to hundreds of pedophiles and so on and so forth. So I would say that as just a little pet project. And then I'd always like to go a little more advanced just for my law enforcement friends, if possible, is just go a little bit deeper because, with the kid cases, look, when I did protection, that's great. A lot of these people are very, very wealthy individuals and they can afford their own protective detail, but kids cannot choose the environment that they're born into. And many of them are born into bad situations that they can't protect themselves. So talking about working those cases and the men and women that sacrifice everything to work those cases, to me is an amazing topic that I wish I could kind of delve into a little bit more.
There's so many things I'm going to talk in the book, but I took something that I love that you do all the time, that is make acronym. And for the people who already have the book, if it's not, the link is on the comments. Go and buy it. You can get it in audiobook. By the way, the voice of Superman is in the audiobook. Love it. You can have the physical book and the person who need paper, or you can have it in Kindle, whatever you decide to have it. You make on the page 163, chapter 12, deceives. and you make an acronym with deceives, and remember the acronym, what it was and why you did it. It was really well done, really, really well done, the way you use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thanks. We can run through it. We definitely talked about delay. We talked about equivocation. We talked about commitment issues. The lack of I using that exclusive qualifiers, those ly statements. Also, when you look at the verbal nonverbal disconnect, this is kind of a unicorn moment. But when you see this and somebody goes no, or you see this and somebody goes yes.
Let's do an exercise with the
Mhm.
people on at home.
Yeah,
Guys, try to say the word three and show four numbers.
yeah,
Three. Okay,
yeah,
this is what he's talking about. Now, in your house, start moving the head, yes, and say no, or says no and try to move the head after. That is how difficult it is. I love to do that. People start liking it. I'm like,
yeah.
I was trying to do that and I can. So that's where he's talking about. So if you want to understand in your own body how difficult it is to do that, and it is not casual, try to do it at home. I'm sorry, Brad, but I love when people start
No,
doing it.
that's perfect. But you've got to be looking at people when you do that. And that's the problem is too many times, we usually do two-person interviews when we do a lot of our significant exams cases. So you've got somebody there to help you out. But if you're looking down on your notepad, if you're one of these people we're so used to asynchronous communication nowadays where we go into our phone and we think about what we're going to text and then we send it out to somebody, blah, blah, blah. It's one of those things where we're not used to looking people in the eyes anymore. And I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that just subtle yes when the no is there. And I'm not going to put it as a red flag. I'm not going to code it. I'm not going to follow it up with another question. So that's an issue. So observation is so important there. So yeah, that's once again, it's an acronym that hopefully helps some people, but is it 100%? No, absolutely not.
And I'm going to give them a fast read because I took my notes. Delaying, exclusive qualifiers,
Mhm.
confronting the questioner, emotional inconsistency, uncertainty, inserting truthful information into a lie. That is my dyslexia. Reading out loud is painful. Verbal and non-verbal disconnect, evading, shifting, vocal inflection. How you come up with this is brilliant. Because when I reassess, oh my God, it's impossible not to remember the acronym you did. Again, page 163, read it, chapter 12.
And that's if we ask the right questions. So if we ask a question adversarially, I may get somebody to push back adversarially. But if I ask a fair question, I mean, I think you've seen this on the Anthony Weiner, just to put out a couple examples. He's asked, did you send those explicit photos to that co-ed? And he can't answer the question. And then he attacks the questioner. Okay. And then you see with Jerry Sandusky, when he's asked by Bob Costas famously, are you a pedophile? It's a legalistic question. He did not view himself as that. So he said no. And he said no immediately with an exclamation point. But Bob Costas, being a great interviewer, followed it up and said, are you sexually attracted to young children? And that was a problem for Sandusky because what did he have to do? He delayed. He repeated the question, am I sexually attracted to young children? Sexually attracted to young children? And then he did a truth sandwich. So he almost did all of these things. Then he said, well, I like hanging around them. Truthful statement. I like spending time with them. Truthful statement. But no, lie. So he only really lied one time in that entire diatribe. So it really exemplified a lot of things is people, we don't like lying and it causes physiological responses in our body. So as a result, we do these things as coping mechanisms to keep that from happening. But you read that and there's going to be a lot of circumstances where you're going to make a false read, so take everything with a grain of salt is that we're still never going to get anywhere close to 100%. There's a reason there is a polygraph because it does help us get to that higher level, but it's not perfect.
Who you are training, how people can study with you beside enjoying the book. And again, I don't get any money for that, only to let you know that lately I've been talking about meat and how much bullshit it's out there. I'm gonna say it, and that I don't need to take a class because I can use ChatGPT. I don't need to read because I can synthesize. Why I'm gonna keep learning if I have a book and ChatGPT is not true. You get to a professional level. You can have the desire to be a doctor, but it's a reason you need to you do 10,000 hours. There is a reason you have a surgeon
Mhm.
working with you, even though when you have done your first surgery. It's impossible to become good in this. People, you flip a coin is how truthful you can be with yourself and finding deception. What you do with that. You
Mhm.
need to learn with few people there is out there, they know really what they're doing. You have more than 3,000 interviews, no? Done? Only.
Yeah,
And middle,
yeah,
middle.
yeah, a lot. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and that's what you learn from, right? So I like kind of equating it to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I like doing, is you learn from your losses and you learn, don't do that again. And you learn it very quickly. And that's the beauty of that art form, is that you're shown by either being choked out or having a joint put in a bad position. Hey, don't do that again. And thankfully, I've had a lot of circumstances where I learned, don't do that again. And over time, you learn the right way to do it. So been blessed in that regard. But as far as getting a hold of me, bradleybeeler.com is my website, and Brad Beeler 1865 are my monikers on LinkedIn and Instagram. I like to put a lot of content out there, so feel free to connect.
Are you giving classes, training, how a corporation? Because I saw on the book again, it's so many things, and I want to talk about the book, and I can't believe we have been an hour. So you talk about examples for salespeople, you talk about
Mhm.
examples for parents. So, like the book that I offer when I'm going to do training with Robin Dreck, I'm going to start bringing your book too, because it have so many things that, again, they're easy to digest and they're not absolute. I love that you don't use absolutes and your mistakes and what you learn from that. So if people want to hire you, what kind of hire they can do to with you? Sales, training, management, what they can do.
Yeah, all the above. Communication is, 80% of corporate success. Soft skills are so important. Yeah, it's great to know how to code. It's great to AI is going to replace some of that, but AI is not going to be able to replace the ability to look somebody in the eyes and talk to your people. So, as far as keynotes, corporate trainings, obviously all the above. They can definitely reach out to me there, and we can definitely set something up.
Brad, love your book again. I'm not going to stop telling you. I tell you in private and I tell you publicly. If you want to read a book that is really about the science and the why and explain in a way that now you can understand better why other books are not working, this is the book to start. Brad, what is next?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the next journey is. Blessed to have this product, and got some kiddos in college, so we'll see where the next couple years takes us. But blessed right now, so I'll take it where I'm at right now. First world problems are all the only thing that I've got right now.
Brad, thank you very much. I'm going to bring it back and we're going to talk more about examples on the book because, again, there are a lot. It's juicy. Thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.